we get set for the fourth race of 24 in this unique event. Only in the virtual world could you crisscross the globe with 5 cars and 5 tracks. 24 individual races across 24 hours. Redline searching for back-to-back wins and for a 4th consecutive podium. And once again we fan out and run our way to turn number 1. Rankin around the outside has already snatched the lead away. Campbell challenges Benito as there's big mess behind. Only the front 7 are going to scamper clear as there is chaos in the gravel down at turn 1.
Yep, absolute carnage in turn 1. Looked to be a bit of a roadblock scenario after sort of, like you say, the 8th position. It looks like Bo has gone off as well, locking up into the outside. I don't know what's happened there. Maybe just catching the brake early. Very, very hard to unlock. Elvis Rankin leads your field away down into the hairpin for the very first time.
And it's a 3-second buffer between 7th and 8th positions for the time being. Look at that separation visually into the hairpin as half moves made by Felix Domin on Peter Zuba. He's +7 is Zuba. Domin's +11. Pedro Sanchez Albert in that BS Plus competition machine, he's +17 and making hay while he can, but there's other drivers with big junk and back in pit lane, and it includes the likes of Abel Torres with a meatball flag inside of the top 15. And so once again we will pick our way through the replays, figure out exactly what unfolded at that opening corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make it about 16 meatball flags on the opening lap of the race as Elvis Rankin leads at Okayama.
Couple cars into pit lane, first time by, probably taking a fast repair and a little bit of a splash of fuel. Of course, not the end of the world for people pitting this early, because we do still believe it might be possible to make it without a stop. So people just taking their fast repair now, it's not the end of the world. But like you say, interesting start to your race. A lot of fast repairs needed potentially, and certainly a chaotic start for those missing the action in the last race.
It's one of those scenarios as well where, I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not quite sure how best to try and pick apart all the madness. So let's try slowly but surely. So they descend on turn 1. And I can't even see where it all kind of instigates from. That's really the issue here, Will. But 7, 8 cars get through safely, and then everybody else trips over one another.
Maybe following from a chopper camera or something could potentially give a little bit more of an insight. But like you say, like we're watching here, 3-4 wide. Some people just braking too late, cold tyres, stack of contact, and then once you get those 2 cars spin at the front there, it just becomes this mess, is the best way to put it. And unfortunately, a lot of contact and a lot of damage.
I'm trying to see if I can find a specific look on board as we once again look from up above. There we go, I found the button. On board with Marcel Chinchik. I mean,
where are you even supposed to go? I mean, to be honest, he gets away pretty lightly from that incident. And unless he's got particularly bad front damage, he will have a good chance of a race here. And yeah, let's see where he can come from. But yeah, it's a bit of a chaotic start there. Unfortunate for a number of drivers, but yeah, interesting to see kind of what happens here and what sort of pace we expect to see people running at the front of the field.
I'll tell you what, a good perspective might be as well to get from Pedro Sanchez Albert. He's +19 on this initial race start. Waiting, and then the green flag drops and everyone fans out in unison. He gets to the inside of the Ivano machine pretty quickly. That's Justin Alonso Jr. And then, well, not really much patience there. And fortunately, all the trouble has gone up high. And much like with Chinchik, he pulls down low and gets out of dodge.
Yeah, super, I wouldn't want to call it lucky, but in the right position at the right time, able to get away from the carnage. And I'd also be interested to see what happened to Nicholas Bowe on the opening lap. Whoa, that's a big contact from one of the BS cars into the back of, I'm not quite sure, maybe one of the Falcons. I didn't quite get a grasp of that. But
coming 55.
Down, right, so coming down into the hairpin, it looks to be maybe, yeah, just a complete misjudgment of when they were going to brake. So yeah, unfortunate.
So we go from singing the praises of avoiding the madness of turn 1 to causing madness into the hairpin. How quickly things can shift around. And this is, I'll peel the curtain back between some of the conversations that Race Control was having pre-race. They expected the first 2 or 3 races, Will, to go fairly smoothly, right, as everyone just settles in. But after that, egos start to rise, people start to take more risks, people start to have less patience as well, and well, the result is what we've seen, and more chaos for Delatrals Automotive, slipping wide at the hairpin.
Number of drivers running wide at the hairpin. We don't have specifically high winds, so nothing to be guessed at there in terms of that. Just a case of, I think, locking a tyre and just not being able to unlock it. Of course, these cars have assisted brake systems. They do have traction control, quite advanced traction control, but say just.
Well,
yeah,
that's the Acura Esports Acura. They're all Acuras, to be fair, so
that's very true.
It's a redundant word to include. Not ideal. That's a very slow car as well. That's Chad Peterson at the hairpin. This is wild. Another start in which 54 took the green, but only about 30 got through scot-free. And so, quick update. We are 7 cars in this leading group. Elvis Rankin from Enzo Benito for Redline and Coanda, respectively. Then Campbell for Grid and Go. Jordan Johnson for Solpec Precision. Their best showing so far today. And Francis McGinn, Augustin Bernier, and Bike 500 Santiago Bastarrica making up this initial queue. And even though Nicholas Boy did go wide on the opening lap, he still, because he got through turn 1 safely, still inside of the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, he got completely away, and yeah, like you say, just a small lockup, which caused him to go wide. But yeah, massive prototype specialist and a very, very good driver. So I expect to see him doing pretty well in this one. So wouldn't be surprised to see him come a little bit back through the field. And yeah, we're seeing the times drop and drop and drop every lap as the tyres get a little bit warmer and people get into a bit more of a rhythm.
Question is, are they doing fuel-saving rhythm? Are they aware that there is a chance to get to the end of this race without a pit stop, even though the Acura is capped at a 70% maximum fuel capacity on the car? There was no adjustment they could make on that, but a little bit of lift and coast might be enough to edge the number to the checkered flag. If you have a light right foot, pretend there's an egg underneath the throttle pedal, and be as...
It's about 0.2 of a litre every lap. That's kind of the margin that people are needing to save here, which sounds like not a lot.
But how much are you using per lap?
Daytona. Well, that's the thing. It's about 10% of your fuel load a lap that you need to save. So it is a fair amount of lifting. Anyone that pitted on lap 1 and took a little bit of a splash, likely to have an even easier time of saving that fuel. But if everybody's running flat out, we can be expecting them to pit at lap 28, which is about 4 or 5 laps from the end.
So that's... It makes it uncomfortable because we're not going to know until we get to the very end of this race.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's sometimes hard just to judge from lap times as to what the drivers are actually doing behind the wheel. Let's jump on board with Norby Kish, multiple-time European truck champion, as I mentioned slightly earlier. But don't discount his sim racing credentials as well. Multiple digital Nürburgring endurance champion on the sim. And look at the wall of trophies behind, as though you needed any more reminder. And he's tucked up behind Luka Nudek. And through these switchback hairpins, this is where this car must be so lethargic and slow to shift its weight around.
And let's not forget that by the rule book, you're not allowed to change the bars, which you are normally allowed to do in a live dynamic situation. By the thing that was given to the teams last night, you're not allowed to change the bars. Maybe it's a fixed setup, so you're not allowed to do that anywhere. I can't quite remember. I don't drive these cars so much. But they're not allowed to change the bar. So it's set to 3 rear bars, so that's sort of a medium sort of setting. So at these low-speed corners, the rear axle is still quite stiff. So not a lot of traction on available.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things where it's more because the car doesn't allow the adjustment more than anything else. Different cars, different levels of adjustments permitted by the iRacing team. That's also something that's been fluid. I remember when I joined iRacing, the Indy car, you could change nothing. And now you have ARBs, you've got the weight jacker as well at your disposal. Just making some of the fixed iRacing official series a little bit more flexible with the setup options available to the drivers. Back up front, let's check in with Enzo Benito on the left side of that look at 2 drivers. Elvis Rankin, bottom right, and slowly edging away. He's now 7/10 clear. Talking fine margins right now, and they are slowly pulling a gap back to Jordan Johnson as well. It's 3 cars pulling away.
Yeah, and I'd say I'm seeing a lot more mistakes in this race than we've seen in the previous race, at least, or I'd say the previous 3. Generally, people seem to find this car a little bit harder to drive. I've seen a lot more lockups, a lot more running wide into the gravel, and it's a challenge. It really is a challenge, and I look forward to this battle between Enzo and Elvis because they're both really, really good drivers, and I think it could get quite interesting.
It's getting darker, no question about that. Here in the 4th race of our 24, heading into the block of nighttime races scheduled. There are 5 consecutive races in which nighttime will be guaranteed, and in those races expect to see the NASCAR truck, Super Formula lights, both at the Charlotte Roval, taking advantage of the lights on the banking. The Radical SR10 will head to Fuji. The Acura will head to Silverstone in what should be an interesting race if heavy rain descends on that track. Rain and night. I don't know if I'd have been volunteering for that race necessarily, even if I am a prototype specialist.
Well, yeah, it's important to note that it's a chance of rain, not a guarantee of rain. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of level that chance is at. Of course, in our opening chance of rain race, it was only a very, very short spell of rain. So it basically didn't affect the race whatsoever. So it'll be interesting to see how it affects it when the rain comes and at what intensity it is, because it could be any intensity, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Remember, we had a big mess on lap 1 into turn 1 that separated out the top 8 from those behind. It's still Peter Zuber that's leading that train. I'm trying to judge on lap time, which is always a dangerous thing to do, Will, as to whether there's fuel saving at the front, if there's fuel saving at the back. What this implies to me is Elvis Rankin, if he is fuel saving, well, he's also flying while he does so.
Yeah, it's interesting to know. I really don't know what to expect. I know the calculations and the numbers behind the idea of the strategy, but there's a good chance that some of these teams have ran it and simulated it already. You know, we've had these tracks for a few days. Maybe there's a case where some believe that you just don't gain enough time from it. You lose too much saving to not gain it back by just going flat out and getting a pit stop. So will be interesting. I expect someone to do it, but we'll have to wait and see, really. And yeah, get a bit more shot of Nicolas Cage and a little bit of a head scratch on the straight.
He's looking, oh, I mean, he's relaxed, but also, did you hear how early he was lifting into turn 1?
I didn't quite know because I don't have the audio up enough, but if you're hearing him lifting pretty early, you can sort of safely assume he's maybe going for the strategy I think is best.
I mean, he lifted off basically before he got to the left part of the track straightening out there, so there is aggressive fuel management going on now. That's a topic as well for this week. Certain Formula One driver complaining that maybe Formula One cars require a bit too much management. I don't think he would have enjoyed this race, that's for sure.
If we put it on the Nordschleife, maybe. But yeah, it's a multitude of drivers, I think, complaining in the media about the way that power unit system is working, but there's only one way to find out, and that's get to the first race. So reserve our judgment for now.
You said it best. Reserve judgment until we actually go racing. Who knows where the sandbags are right now? Marcel Chinchik, the first ever R1 champion, part of the RHG and Team Vitality group. You can see one of his checks behind him. He's got one of those hero cards as well, albeit now being passed by Norby Kish. Will, where's your championship belt? The VCO Esports Racing League championship belt. Where have you put yours?
I've not put it up yet, actually. It's currently sat in the living room on the couch because I haven't thought of a good place to put it yet. But I will get it up somewhere in my room, hopefully at some point. But it's a bit of a unique item. And that's what makes the Esports Racing League so good. It's a unique item to place somewhere in your house or room. So it's a little bit of a challenge to consider where to put it. But yeah, it's currently on my couch in the living room.
Clearly, just so that everyone who walks in is aware of the significance. I think that Norby Kish has had enough of the 2 second slower lap times that Peter Zuber's running. I've got to assume, though, if Sean Campbell's saving fuel so aggressively, not really losing track of Elvis Rankin, there is no way teams like Coanda and Redline have not also figured out that they can get to the end by saving some fuel and avoiding a pit stop.
Yeah, I expect most people to get their head around this because a lot of people have a fuel calculator. Let's say CAPS or Race Labs, or even just generally looking at the, when you're considering making a pit stop, you know what your target is, or you just know how much you're going to be refueling. And when it says 5 litres on a normal fuel lap, or 6 litres, let's say, you start to think, can I not just save that? You know what I mean? So I expect a lot of people to think of that sort of strategy. But we do see a huge variance in pace between the likes of Zuba and Rankin, and you start to think, well, is Zuba saving too much? Because we've seen him in the IMSA Esports series. He's more than competent. There's no way he's 2 seconds a lap off on pace. So potentially damage, or maybe just, like you say, saving a bit heavier than everybody else.
It's another race where closing on half the field has made a trip to pit lane to take their fast repair. So I think the next couple of races could be quite sketchy as the intensity, the animosity just starts to bubble up. And the next race is going to take us with the Charlotte Radical SR1 to the Charlotte Roval. After that, Super Formula Lights at Road America. That race has got a chance of rain potentially. Before we return here to Okayama with the Formula Ford machines, as Will had mentioned earlier, there's no regular rotation between the 5 cars and 5 tracks. It's chopping and changing all the time, and it's on the teams to have adapted their driver lineups accordingly. It almost looks as though they're in slow motion right now, such as the speed that is being run. And so I am very curious. Would love to hear the thought of what's going on in the head of a Peter Zuber right now. Problem is, we can barely know what's going on in his head if we can hardly see his face as well. The camera has been shaken up just a little bit in that rig.
I think you can see 50% of his face because that's the amount of fuel that he's saving every lap over the rest of the competitors. So I'm not sure really, but ultimately this is it's a Japanese track. It's a low grip asphalt that is represented in iRacing. You do notice when you come to a track like this that you have less grip. So naturally this car around this circuit does feel quite extreme in the way that it handles and the way that it drives. So it's an important thing to note, and something that you become abundantly aware of when you've drove a lot of races around this circuit.
And it's not the warmest of track temperatures, so in some ways you'd have expected that to give them a bit more grip. Cooler conditions on iRacing, typically maximizing the adhesion of the tire, but overcast conditions. It is very dark and gloomy here today for this 4th race in 24. 30 minutes away from being 4 complete, 20 to go in VCO Infinity. And I think...
How mad's that? 4 complete. And we've got 20 more left. That is insane. It's the insanity of this event that we have 20 more individual car and track combinations to go before we get the conclusion of this. It's just chaos.
I'm glad I've got a couple of hours off before I'm back on for the mid part of the day. Because, we had a short break, Will, to welcome you into the booth and say goodbye to Jeremy Scott. We'll have another quick break when we swap over from the 2 of us. Chadwick alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati. Ewan O'Leary will join us. We'll have Dane Baird also taking over on the production duties as well. It's also a energy management equation that we are balancing for our race control team, for our broadcast crews as well. As with the drivers, remember Sebastian Jobe winning the previous race, Super Formula Lights at Silverstone. Now he's handed the baton on over to his teammate Enzo Benito, who did drive already in this race. We haven't seen Cooper Webster, haven't seen Gustavo Ariel just yet. Indicates to me they're being saved for maybe some of those night hours.
Yeah, let's not forget that, someone like Cooper, obviously massively different time zone, but Ariel as well, that's, I think, 3 or 4 hours back from the European time zone, so it does help quite a lot to have those drivers in your composition. It doesn't mean that people are having to be awake in the early hours of the morning, which is optimal. An important point to note, on the current lap times, we're currently going 33.01 laps in this race, and that could be a definitive thing when it comes to how much fuel you're needing to save, because we're very close to having the average lap time drop us below a 34-lap race.
In which case this extra fuel saving that's being done by these drivers is going to be a moot point.
Potentially, yes.
Elvis Rankin's the one that's kind of in control of that, and he has started to break clear of Benito, of Sean Campbell. But now the fun of VCO Infinity, with the varying skill levels that we have through the field, the large field that we have as well. 55 cars entered, 54 regular entrants in the first handful of races that we've had, with I think one team withdrawing. It means that a track as short as this, traffic is going to be a reality, and that's the sight in front of the purple and orange machine. The first car in line that they see now is the Impact SimSport machine, down in 38th position.
Yeah, and it's great to see VCO putting on this event again for everyone to be a part of. It's a great community event for iRacing. I think that, you know, when we look at it really, okay, it's not a mandatory of 5 drivers, and there is a number of teams that aren't using 5 drivers. But like, what's that? Like 100 and it's way more than that. It's like
it's about 200 like something.
Between 200 and 300 individual drivers competing in this event today, all as a part of a community, as a part of a team, and it's a great thing to have going on in the weekend for you to do. Yeah, it may mess up your sleep schedule a little bit, but it's a brilliant event to be a part of.
I'm sure there are some partners of some of our competitors saying, you know, there's something else happening this weekend. No, it's not the Daytona 500. No, it's not the Bathurst 12 hours. Oh, what's that thing called? Oh, Valentine's Day, that's right. But, you know, we still have a blockbuster field, so clearly priorities. And some of our competitors have been letting their partners know where their priorities lie on this incredible weekend, and hoping it's not such a long wait before we do it again. There's a lot of lift and effort, obviously, to make these events happen, but who knows? Could there be a second VCO Infinity in 2026? I'm just throwing it out there. We'll see if I get shouted at afterwards. Traffic, Delta Sport leaving pit lane, stay out of trouble. Let the purple and orange command the Esports leading machine, Elvis Rankin, work their way through. The lights did flash into turn 1. Rankin is wanting this Impact SimSport machine to make his life a little bit easier. Yeah,
it would be good for him to make the move. I mean, if you're fresh out the pits or you're on full fuel, you will be able to go a little bit faster. A little bit of a connection issue there, but leaders are being let through accordingly. So Benito probably held up less there than Rankin. So that's sometimes a disadvantage you can have when you're the leading car coming through traffic, that the car behind you, because it's so close, just gets a free pass to come past. So interesting factor to look at there. And yeah, we're still teetering on the edge of a 34 or 33 lap race.
A couple of drivers who have made up some big headway since the start of this race. Pablo Espez, not a great qualifying from him outside of the top 50. He's 37 spots up into 14th for the time being, with 22 minutes left to go. Can we get a look at championship points? Well, I don't think those are necessarily correct, so I'll see if I can click the right buttons and get that working again in a couple of seconds' time. But it's an ominous sign when you have drivers at the front continuing to look so consistent. Vitality, Sim Racing, Marcel Chinchik dropping down a couple of spots. Might lose out another one as Pablo Espez goes onto the grass around the outside. He'll drop back behind. One of the lap machines, and now a big snap. I wonder if there's damage for Pablo Espez as he regathers it and back onto track.
Let's not forget, when you're running wide into the grass like that, you're suddenly getting all this grass and dirt all over your tyres, which is a modern addition to iRacing, which would mean that when you're going into that corner, you've got a lot less grip. So interesting factor to think about, and yeah, like you say, bit of a chance of damage maybe, and thankfully regained control of his car.
So another move from Pablo Caroleo on Peter Zuber. I think he's also had enough of the patient game. Norby Kish has pulled 7 seconds, Will, on Peter Zuber since clearing up the road. What are we looking like in terms of average lap times right now? Are we seeing 33 or 34 on the board?
if I had to guess, I would guess we're going to go 33 laps, which does give us a bit more leeway in that fuel margin. I think a lot of people were anticipating the potential of 34, but like I say, it's very variable. You know, it's going to matter a lot what the leaders do. So, you know, if you're a leading car, you have a real chance to you know, manipulate this now. But, you know, it could be in your interest as well to make it go one lap less. So it's also a factor you have to consider. So it's an interesting point. I wanted to bring up how the hybrid systems now work in these GTP class cars, and how that they're essentially an efficiency tool, and whether you would prefer it to be like it used to be. It's like I know it was incorrect, but the way that the hybrid is now implemented, you could argue is maybe slightly less fun. Would be my take on it.
Well, my answer to that is, do you want sim racing or?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right, where hybrid systems in general, and this is probably a sweeping generalization, but it's still probably fairly accurate. They're not intended to make race cars more fun to drive, right?
Yeah.
The only time that really we've had hybrid systems that don't really play much of a part was back in the LMP1 days, right, where you had a lot of automated management and then you had an overtake button, which is kind of what we used to have in these GTPs before it's gone back to the modern wizardry that accompanies these hybrid systems. Look, I think that the way I look at it is, if we're going to have to go hybrid, it is going to lead to a lot more tunability, right? Fundamentally, when you add in a lot more of the factors that you can control, both in regen and deployment, you could open it up. But at least what IMSA has done is try and use standard units to make sure that, you know, there's not development going on the hybrids as well. The reality is, whether you look at IndyCar or IMSA GTP, though, how much does the average fan understand how hybrid is impacting the car on a lap-by-lap basis? I think the answer is probably none.
None, yeah. I think until I really saw it implemented in iRacing properly with the GTP update that I think came within the last year, I would say. I think it came maybe mid-25. I didn't really understand it. I didn't really understand how the hybrid systems worked in these sorts of cars and what they actually contributed towards. And then I think when you understand how these hybrids work, you now start to understand why there is metrics such as virtual energy involved in the World Endurance Championship and stuff like that, and what that really means.
It's a bit of gravel being kicked up on the track. Yeah, the other thing that we have to consider, and we're getting rather off topic in what is a very fuel management driven race, other thing to consider is that there needs to be a standardization of the LMH and LMDH rule sets, the technical rule sets, that is. It's all well and good saying that, you know, they can compete against one another and we're going to do BOP against one another, but ultimately it becomes more and more difficult the more diverse the technical rule sets are. Finally some action as Francis McGinn squeezes in front of Jordan Johnson, Altitude Free M and Solpec Precision, joined by Blue Mercure. Left front lockup for Johnson, who allows Augustin Bernier to slip through up to 5th. And now Bike 500 and Nicholas Boy latched onto the tail end of this queue as well.
Yeah, a bit of action here. Hopefully Boy can now start to close up that gap. The gap that's been pretty stagnant for the last few laps. This train has been a little bit dormant with the likes of the strategy that we know is at play. But it's starting to kick off a little bit now as people get a little bit more confident in your fuel number. You likely, when you're trying to hit one of these targets, you oversave, and then you're like, oh, now I've got a bit spare, so I can use it. I can use it to attack. You want to be able to push those last few laps flat out if you can, to start and fight and really try and make a few positions, especially if you're, Johnson, who's in 6th, and he can see himself quite easily getting to 4th. So it's a really dynamic scenario, and people are going to be thinking about that, and maybe someone actually uses a little bit too much and then has to save at the end. And it is more interesting than it appears in the mid-race. I promise you that. I'm sure we'll see that as things go on.
Live points on top right, 11 the gap between Redline and Kawanda, but they are starting to build the buffer to the likes of BS Plus Hybrid. EMM and Map Performance tied momentarily as it chops and changes. Abel Torres fighting with Nick Ledecky in the BS Plus hybrid machine. So these are very important points actually right now. Is into the wall we're going. Abel Torres alongside of the U Amateurs machine, Dominic Koroshavin. And after what has been a rather quiet race, a wild opening start, yes, we've got a bit more drama out on track.
Yes, and that is, I mean, what do you expect? I mean, we're going to have a lot of races and a lot of things to happen. I have a few friends that I've just noticed who are making fun of my accent, so I'm going to try and southern it up a bit. But yeah, a little bit of a, I guess, just wide into the corner. I'd like to watch that again. So let's have a look riding on board here. So looks like it went a little bit deep, sort of into the corner, and that, right, okay. So it's just a case of probably completely misjudging it because you were side by side, you were trying to fight as hard as you can, and yeah, unfortunately that causes quite a big contact on the outside of turn 3.
Yeah, the rear end stepped around pretty quick for the car on the inside, and that's what really led to the chaos. Back into traffic, Rankin and Benito, half a car length or so between them at the apex of the hairpin, and now with a buffer back to Sean Campbell. So an opportunity for them to focus on each other. The two most consistent teams in the early phase of VCO Infinity. That was a nervy moment through the traffic, though. On board with Benito, who's got to give a wide berth on the inside car there. Navigating through the traffic safely with just 14 minutes left to go. Will, we are getting closer to finding out, A, if this is a 33-lap race, B, if anyone's heading down to pit lane or if they're saving fuel to the end.
It's still absolutely up for grabs. It's now 34, but will it be 33? Who knows? I know iRacing tends to margin on the caution of safety, so if you are going 33.0 laps, it's likely to go 33 instead of 34. So we will see that. Limicure down to the inside of Francis McGinn. They're going to be side by side through the exit of turn 1 and into turn 2. Optimal line there for the free altitude driver of Francis McGinn. He's going to be able to defend the position for now, but as we go down into the hairpin, looks to be that Bernie has been able to get the inside line and complete that move.
And an Atwood curve. Not so cambered in once you get to the middle of the track there. It's possible to hug the inside and roll the speed. Sometimes you see cars cut out a little bit wide, but you put yourself slightly off camber occasionally, depending on how wide you end up sweeping. It was very dark for a moment. Overcast conditions. Sun's poking out from beyond those clouds once again. Oh, behind this, Drago Racing slip past Bike 500. Nicholas Boy, the recovery continues after he sent himself off the road at turn 4 on the opening lap. It's not been an easy day for Drago either, let's be real. Bring up those points again, Will. There's two teams that you would have expected to challenge Redline and Coando. Grid and Go and Drago Racing, yes, they're both in the top 10, but they need those two teams running up front to stumble at some point before the end of this event.
Yeah, and I think it's important to see the teams that you see at the top right now are probably teams that haven't had DNFs. And as we get later into the event, you'll start to see it balance out a little bit more from the teams that on average are performing better than the others. At the moment, you know, if you've completely finished last in one of these races, that's a huge impact to your current points tally. So it means that, okay, now for the time being, we've seen the point system as it is and how people are as they are. Teams that have had these big DNFs will be likely to gain over the course of the next 20 races. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch, and yeah, certainly it paints an interesting picture.
Listening to that engine spool up, the Acura has an engine initially slated to fit into an Indy car. It's a free revving engine. It's found a great home in the world of sports car racing. Honda partnering up with Meyer Shank Racing to actually put some of the Honda engineers into the paddock on a week-by-week basis. Been really fascinating to follow that story. What's happened to BS Plus Hybrid, though? They're in the points conversation, and well, first they tag Vitality, and then because of that they get driven into by their teammate.
Yeah, so not too good for them. Maybe potentially a chance of a penalty. It's important just to kind of have a little watch of that. I'd say that's a racing incident. But yeah, maybe some rear damage for that BS hybrid car. It looks like the Solar Pet car's gone off. I'm not sure what's happened there. Completely out of the race, potentially. And what a disaster for Jordan Johnson.
Oh, he had been struggling with this fixed setup. The longer we went, the balance of the car really not suiting him. And as the leaders close back up once again, turn 2 has claimed yet another victim. And oh, he just never gets to the apex. A lazy spin of the rear and into the wall hard.
Yeah, and that's a huge moment. We're going to get to watch it on board from the cockpit. Third gear exiting turn number 1. Going to keep it in that gear, up to 4th actually. Goes into 1, and I just think carries a little bit too much speed, and then the rear just completely gives up on him. And once you're around, you're gone, and you're in the wall. Race over.
So put your team manager hat on, Will. 10 minutes left to go. How aggressive are you telling Enzo Benito to be here? Or are you telling him that, you know what, 2nd place, I'm fine with that?
It depends if you consider the dynamic of it being a Redline car versus a Coanda car, which of course carries more weight with the history between these two teams. I think that certainly, you know, if you're Coanda or if you're Redline, you both want to be making sure you're winning this race from a pride perspective. But realistically, if you're thinking about the long game, it's not worth putting on an aggressive move just to win the race. It's what, 1 point? It's really not worth it. So I would probably, if I had full control, I'd be just saying, just sit, hope he makes a mistake, and don't do anything rash or reckless.
And am I correct in saying we are trending to 33 laps right now?
Well, yeah, but not by a large margin. We're talking by about 0.003 of a lap. So what's that? A few tenths of a second, if anything?
Yeah, it's fine margins. No questions about that. And the reality is Benito's trying to push Rankin here into that extra lap potentially. Wondering what that means in terms of fuel. Let's quickly look at another replay off the final corner for the Impact SimSport crew. Oh, and they just get turned on the nose. I think that's of the Sorrento Motorsports number 22. Awkward place to find yourself stranded.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've just been watching a little bit further down the field, and you know, we've noted that Zuba has been saving a lot of fuel for the course of the race, or just running pretty slow laps. I'm not sure if that's due to a little bit of damage, but his car looks relatively clean. Now, he's already been passed by, okay, a bit biased, Renhofer, who's already come into the pit lane, took fuel and took a fast repair. So if you're on that strategy, and if let's say his strategy is this fuel saving, and he's not impacted by damage, he's already lost a very, very large amount of time, and he's currently 50 seconds back from the lead.
It's an impressive effort that these drivers are able to go so fast while still saving. Small mistake from Benito there as he goes deep into the brake zone. I say small mistake, it's not cost him anything. And now working back out through turn 7 up towards Redmond. Yeah, such an interesting track is Okayama, and you know, many of the drivers will have raced it before. I don't think they will have ever raced it in a car quite as fast and capable as this, and the traffic will play a part here. There's no question about that. And Rankin's on the flashers. He needs the assistance here. Out of turn 11, quite descriptively called the last corner. And as they fly back towards turn 1, it's a very short blast. It's 2 tenths between them at the line. 6 minutes to go, Will. Enzo Benito's not going to give this one up. He is hungry for another win.
Yeah, and it's going to be an intense one. Like you say, it's going to come down to a lot of traffic, potentially, here in this race. The management of this race is in the balance by how this traffic behaves. And it's really weird if you're a lapped car in this situation, because you don't want to brake too suddenly or dive out the way, but then just naturally you're just a little bit slower than the guys at the top of this field. So it can have massive impact on your race. This is super, super close, and I'd be really interesting to see. It's going to be really interesting to see how this race pans out right at the end.
And is it worth the points? Remember, every position worth the points. Again, maybe red line in the ear of Benito saying, let's make it 4 podiums in a row. It doesn't need to be a race win, and continue just to stretch the advantage to those behind. 5 minutes to go to the checkered flag. Ewan O'Leary will join Will Chadwick in the booth for the next couple of hours as we rotate things here in the commentary booth. Down to pit lane for One driver a couple of laps down who wants no part of holding up the leaders right now. And every time they work their way closer to one of their competitors, Enzo Benito sniffs for his opportunity.
Yeah, and it's crucial. This is absolutely crucial in the course of this race. We've only got 5 minutes to go. 3, 4, 5 laps remaining at absolute maximum of 5. And any small mistake, small lockup, small change of your brake migration, just causing you to have a bit of a snap into a corner will cost you the position. The pressure is immense on Rankin right now. Benito harrying the back of that Kawanda Acura.
Feels weird to say the words Kawanda Acura, but having said that, for a team that's had so much of a affiliation with Porsche, they did race in the Ferrari 499P in the iRacing Daytona 24 as well. 4.5 minutes left to go. Will mean, is it 3 more laps at the line?
0.002. That's what we're currently in the margin. It's really close. I can't say what it would be. We'll have to wait and see. The thing is, when you're under this much pressure, you're having to push that little bit harder. And if you push that bit harder, you might end up sending it to another lap. And that may be hard. That may be detrimental to your fuel strategy, potentially.
What's the latest update you've got, Will? How many laps is it saying now?
002, like I say, it's
okay.
32.98 as it currently stands.
I was hoping for an update at the line that would shed a bit more light on us, but I guess we aren't going to get that reward. Of the 4 races we've had, one, a bit slow. Sebastian Jobe running away at the front of our Super Formula Lights race at Silverstone. The other 3 have kept you transfixed, but all for very different reasons. And it makes sense. 3 very different cars. Lock up on the right front for Benito as he sweeps through the hairpin. That's a couple of car lengths that he's now got to claw back up as they kick up a bit of that gravels in that short run between 6 and 7. The good news for these 2 drivers is they live and breathe these situations. Pressure is not an unusual position to find themselves in. But Will, this is a weird situation to find yourself in relative to everything that they normally do in the world of sim racing.
And that's infinity for you. That is infinity for you. And like you said, that little mistake from Benito does give Rankin a little bit more relaxed of a situation. You know, you're only looking at 2-3 tenths of a second, but that's a pretty big margin in situations like these. I would be fairly confident to say that this race will now go through 33 laps, just because, like I say, iRacing has that leniency. It doesn't like to give on a 33.0, it usually gives 33 laps, not 34. So I would be pretty confident at this moment in time to say that we will go 33 laps. So only a few laps to go now to decide these 2 top positions.
And while we have been transfixed by up front action, it's not to say there's not stories through the field. 16th on back, Fenalosa fending off Jesse Jones. Grin and go, that's Peter Zuber. I think you are right, dealing with damage. Juan Lamus trying to rip yet another position away from the number 2 machine. But as we head into what is going to be now the final 2 laps, I don't think there's much question of that, although it is going to be so close when we get back to the line. This is amazing. This is what VCO Infinity is all about. And the 5th edition has got the 2 biggest teams in sim racing swinging at the front of the field. Doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 2 laps at this point, it is a run to the end, and Elvis Rankin is half a second to the clear over Enzo Benito.
Yeah, super close between these 2. Very, very close in the back section of the last lap. Benito forcing Rankin to defend. So can he do that this time by? They're both immensely focused, but the gap up to half a second exiting turn 2. Is that enough of a margin for Rankin to survive this onslaught from Benito?
Good exit. Up the hill. Bit of a wiggle from Rankin, but it's good enough, you would think. And now out of 5, opportunities dwindling for Enzo Benito, who once again shows himself in that mirror. He arcs through the corner just to remind Rankin who's there. There's no way you make a move through 6, through 7. Might take a mistake from Rankin to dig wheels into the gravel, but no such mistake up front. Still unsure, is it going to be one more lap or not? But they have done what we thought could be done. Get to the end of the race without a green flag pit stop. And will it be the white flag? Will it be the checkered flag? Not a reaction yet from Elvis Rankin, but the smile starting to seep through. Job done as Kawanda Esports strike in VCO Infinity at Okayama.